You're here.
Hey Grace,
Hello, hi Andrea.
good evening.
Okay. Yes.
How
Yes,
are you?
warm welcome. Yes. Okay, well, it's time to start. So I think people are still joining us, but we'll go ahead and start it. Yes, I extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you, those who have joined us from different parts of the world at different times. Some of us I know are late in the night, and some of us are a bit early in the morning. And it's fantastic to see such a diverse worldwide audience. Welcome to everyone for joining us for the book launch of the Bloomsbury Handbook to Friedrich Froebel. My name is Grace Choi. I'm the president of International Froebel Society. International Froebel Society was founded in 2002 by a group of international Froebelians, which includes scholars, researchers, and practitioners. We hold biannual conferences. We just had our 10th conference this year in the beautiful town of Maynooth, Ireland, at the Maynooth College. And our next conference will be held at Erfurt, Germany. So please come and visit our website for further information. It is my pleasure to chair today's event. This is a very exciting event incorporating scholars from around the world who have participated in this extremely exciting volume. There are a total of 74 contributors who co-authored this handbook, and it's a very expansive and collaborative volume that I'm delighted to introduce. In my view, this book is grounded in meticulous and thoughtful research and analysis, and I congratulate you all for the thoroughness of your research and analysis and offering so many thoughtful insights. Well, I'm currently a little more than halfway through this book, which not only covers a wide range of topics about Froebel, but also reflects on the challenges and opportunities of applying Froebel's pedagogy and approaches in the 21st century. So in my view, this book is essential reading for anyone who wishes to implement Froebel in their own practice. So before we begin with our panelists today, I would like to walk you through some logistical information and set expectations for our conversation today. We will be recording this 60-minute session and making it available on our International Froebel Society website. And I would like to ask our audience to write on the chat box your name and where you're from and any questions or comments you might have about the book. And due to the time constraint, we will not be able to have Q&A sessions. So let me briefly introduce our speakers today that everyone's been waiting for. Our first speaker is Tina Bruce, who I don't think I have to really give a huge introduction. She's an honorary professor of early childhood education at University of Roehampton. She's an author and also awarded Outstanding Woman Scholar in Education by the Virginia Commonwealth University. And she has also worked with British Council, so vice president of early education, also a committee member of IFS, and an associate member of the Froebel Trust, and a patron of the Center for Literacy in Primary Education. Our second speaker is Dr. Yukio Nishida. She's a lecturer at the School of Education at University of Aberdeen in the UK. Her focus of research is the history of kindergarten movement, Froebelian pedagogies in practice. She's the author of the Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, and Something Froebel. Her recent project includes the history of childhood and social construction of childhood. Our third speaker is Dr. Sasha Powell. She's a Chief Executive Officer of Froebel Trust, a charity which advances Froebelian education through research and practice development. She has also worked in early childhood education and care since 1990s and has published more than 40 books and articles. And don't worry, we'll not name all those 40 books. Our fourth speaker is Helga Wasmuth. He's a professor at the Department of Childhood Education at Mercy University in the United States. Among his research interests are early education policy, as well as a history of and postmodern perspectives on early childhood education. He's a founding member of Cultures of Early Childhood Education, which is an international research network. He also published numerous books and articles. Our last speaker is Jane Winnett. She's a former head teacher of 2 maintained nursery schools in Edinburgh, Scotland. She's also a founding member of the Edinburgh Froebel Network and tutor on the Froebel CPD and MS courses at the University of Edinburgh. She is a trustee of the Froebel Trust and currently chairs the Education and Research Committee. She has written numerous articles. Now, without further ado, let me invite Tina Bruce to the screen.
Hello. I'm going to say hello to people wherever they are in the world. And I would like to thank you, Grace, as president of the International Froebel Society, for your generous introduction. And indeed, the Froebel community, with all their different kinds of expertise, who've enabled this event to come to fruition. Andrea Schmid, Vice President of IFS, and Nicholas Rathert at the University of Erfurt, and Sasha Powell and Victoria Arnay at the Froebel Trust, Helga Wasmuth and his colleagues at Mercy College, and Yukio Nishida and Jane Winnett in the editorial team, and I'm sure others too, for sure. It's a truly international piece of work which has made this book launch event happen today and will make possible similar future events for the International Froebel Society. and contributing a different but centrally important contribution, the 74 authors and 5 translators of the chapters in the Bloomsbury Handbook to Froebel. You can imagine that we won't be able to mention you all. As a team of editors, we've valued deeply working with each of you, the authors, throughout this process. The willing commitment, expertise, energy that you've given to this project is powerful, and we thank you. Of course, there's always a story behind a book, as well as the story that the book tells. And this is certainly true for the book that we're celebrating today, the Bloomsbury Handbook to Friedrich Froebel. There is a Maori expression which demonstrates the story of this book. Let us know you as you were in times gone by. Let us know you as you are. Let us know you as you dream to be. When Mark Richardson at Bloomsbury Academic contacted me and invited the submission of a proposal for a handbook about Friedrich Froebel, it felt important to gather together a team of editors who, through their different areas of Froebelian expertise, would embrace pondering and reflecting on the past, present, and future possibilities of Froebelian study, research, and practice. I've always believed that it's important for researchers, academics, scholars, all those who study Froebel should link with and work closely with those who lead his legacy in practical ways. This book brings together the study and practice of Froebel as it was, as it is, and as it might be. Our editorial team of Helga Wasmuth, Yukio Nishida, Jane Winnett, Sasha Powell, and myself worked closely together and came to the decision to structure the handbook in the 4 sections: connections, disconnections, reconnecting, and interconnecting. Section 1, with editor Helga Wasmuth, is about connections with the past and searching for the authentic Friedrich Froebel. The importance of translation beams out. Helga will expand on this in his talk. Section 2, editor Yukio Nishida, is about disconnections and transitology in Froebelian practices, transfer, translation, transformation of Froebelian study and practice. And Yukio will talk about this. The first 2 sections of the handbook interrogate the past, the edifice on which the work of today rests. There's no such thing as the present. The past is always there, influencing how we come to do things today. Section 3, with editor Jane Winnett, is titled Reconnecting. It's exploring and working through the challenges of current Froebelian practices. Knowledgeable and nurturing adults matter. Training is key. When researchers and practitioners work in an equal partnership, there are exciting developments. When Froebel practitioner leaders form local Froebel networks, there is progress. Section 4, with editors Sasha Powell and myself, is titled Interconnecting, exploring and finding links between essentials of Froebelian principles and practices in current research and theories. This section is encouragingly large. It demonstrates the canon of Froebelian research literature that's burgeoning today, and Sasha will talk about this. Finally, we have been thrilled by the response of the reviewers to the connections, disconnections, reconnecting, and interconnecting explored in the journey so far. We'd like to thank them from our hearts. These are extracts of what they have said. Mary Benson McMullen, Professor of Early Childhood Education at Indiana University, says of the handbook that Froebel's work is translated, transformed, culturally contextualized over time and geographical space, yet the values remain uniquely Froebelian and highly relevant today. And Alison Clark, Professor of Early Childhood Education at the University of Southeastern Norway, sees the book as a state-of-the-art compendium of historical and contemporary significance of Friedrich Froebel's principles and practice in early childhood education and beyond. And so I am delighted to hand over now to Helga Wasmuth, colleague editor of Section 1 in the Bloomsbury Handbook of Froebel.
Thank you, Tina. Good morning here from New York, wherever you are. It might be in the evening or in the afternoon, but it's great to see that so many of you have joined us here for this session. I also want to say, first of all, thanks to Grace and Andrea, who organized this event, which is the first web event organized by the IFS. And that's probably why the chat is not working. I'm very sorry about that. I thought it would work, but it doesn't. I hope you can see, at least in the Q&A, what everyone is writing. Otherwise, I will try to answer everything so that you can see it who is here. Sorry again. As I said, first time we are still trying to figure these things out. So about my section, and so back then, when Tina asked me if I would like to join the editorial team, so first of all, it was of course a great honor to be asked and to be part of this team, and it was really a great team that worked on this book together over, I think, probably 1.5 to 2 years. We worked on that, and so we talked about what we would like to see in this book, and for what kind of sections we would like to be responsible. And as most of my work about Froebel has to do with the history of kindergarten, of course, but also the history of his writings, and the problem of getting access to the authentic Froebel, to primary sources, and then the second layer, what that means when it comes to translations. So we agreed that this would be the section that I would look into. And so I was really interested in finding authors who would look at different kind of things. So they would look at Froebel's educational theory, also at his philosophy, who is the base of many of the things he's doing. Then I would want also see that we can get something about the translations and the difficulties we have there. And then lastly, how we can access. And I'm very glad that we found so many great authors who were willing to write something for the book. And I will talk a little bit about these authors and what they wrote about. So Yukio, if you could go to the next slide. So just to start with, so what are the issues that I just mentioned already a little bit? So the problems with Froebel is there are many things that make it difficult to get access to his work and to really understand what he's talking about. So the first thing is, of course, is his foreign metaphysical thinking. So he lived in a time where people were thinking differently than we are thinking today, at least many of us. And so it is very often difficult to understand what he wanted to say, especially when it comes to his philosophy, which is normally called the law of the sphere. But the problem is, everything he was thinking and writing about is based on this law. So that's why we felt it's really important to have something like that. Then the other issue is that very often there's just selective perceptions of Froebel. So very often we just take snippets, something we like about him, and then we say this is the real Froebel. So that's also why we wanted to have authors who will go back to the primary sources and really look what he wrote. Then the next problem is with the translations. So Froebel, of course, wrote in German, and we have some translations, but they are rather old and they are rather outdated. So that's another layer of an issue when it comes to Froebel. Then, of course, the next question is like, how can we get access to these primary sources? So where can we find his work? How can we access to that? And then the last question we also wanted to think about is, as as some authors write about history. So why do we actually have to bother reading Froebel these days? So why should we do that? So talking about these things that I just laid out a little bit. So we were really glad to have people who were looking into the law of the sphere. So that is the article by Michael Winkler, who looked at the law of the sphere and described how this idea with the goal of life unification is actually the basis of all of his thinking. So I think this article gives a really great insight into this complicated thinking, and it's very foreign, and but I think it also offers quite a few insights in how Froebel saw it and why it is still interesting today. But it was not only the philosophy that influenced his thinking, it was, I mean, contemporary philosophy, like people like Schelling and Fichte, of course, had a huge influence, but also like mathematical concepts and scientific concepts. And that's why we were also very glad that Michael Friedman wrote his article, which really clearly shows the basis, the mathematical basis of his thinking and how he used contemporary authors who thought about math for his own ideas when he thought about education and teaching. So these two articles really serve as a good basis to see, like, okay, how was he influenced and how did he develop, how did Froebel develop his thinking? Then, as I said earlier, of course, we were interested to see, what was his thinking, his educational thinking regarding kindergarten and play pedagogy and the pedagogy with infants. And this is, of course, very difficult when it comes to kindergarten, because there is no one book that looks at his kindergarten pedagogy. So you have to find his ideas in various articles. And that's why we were really glad that Ulf Sauerbrei wrote his article, who really touches on many of the key principles and key ideas of kindergarten pedagogy. And he also makes connections to the law of the sphere. So I think these articles work very well together to see these kind of connections. And the other is also true for Christine Conrad's article about Froebel's last big project, Mutter and Koselieder, which is sometimes named his most important book. And she also gives a really great insight in this development of this book, and also like some of the key ideas which show it's not just a book for mothers where they can play with children, but it's really like an educational theory behind it, and she develops that very well. So this way we have covered some of the things in the limited space we have, and I think it's really great for authors who are interested in getting to learn more and learn more about his basics ideas when it comes to pedagogy. As I said earlier, the question is where can we find these kind of things? And so that's why we were really glad that we had two or three people with two articles. The one is by Bettina Reimers and Stefan Gramme, who work at the BBF in Berlin, which is like a library and a research library for educational theory. And there you can find all of the letters that Froebel wrote, and you can find them in a digital version, which still is a problem. You need to read German, but if you can, so this is like a super great source for learning more about Froebel. And the BBF is really helpful and really supportive to all researchers. So we are really glad that they wrote that, where you can learn a little bit about the estate of Froebel's work and where you could find it, and also that you can have this kind of access right now. And the other article by Isabel Schamberger from the Friedrich Froebel Museum in Bad Blankenburg also shows, first of all, the archives they have, the research they are doing there, but also what they are doing these days to keep Froebel's legacy alive and his pedagogy alive. So both these articles show where you can work with authentic Froebel, where you can find his works, and I think that's for the ones who are really interested in to dig deeper into Froebel's ideas. It's great resources. As I mentioned earlier, one of the problems is that we have to translate Froebel. Like as you can see here right now, so we are in an international group, and Froebel's pedagogy, it's really a lot of people in the UK, in Australia, in Japan, in China are interested in, so we need these kind of translations. But because his thinking is so difficult, and to translate him is very challenging. So that's where Sebastian Engelmann in his article talked about that, what we need to consider if we want to translate him. And interestingly, so one of the key terms he used is the sphere, and he and Michael Winkler, they didn't speak about that, but so you can see like how important this concept of the sphere is. And Sebastian in his article shows like, okay, what do we need to consider if we want to translate Froebel? What are the challenges we are having these days? And I think that's something the ones who are bilingual and want to translate Froebel, and there is still the hope that one day maybe we get more translations and more modern and newer translations can find some interesting ideas there. And then lastly, the question I had at the beginning, why should we bother reading him today and what can he tell us today? And I think all of the articles, not only in my section, but of course, especially in the later sections where they talk about the practice, show why Froebel still is of interest and why it's still valuable to think about him or with him and think about his key principles. But in my section, there are two articles. So it's the one by Winkler, again, who really thinks about that. So what can it mean today? And then the final article by Karl Neumann, where he talks about peace as unification of life. And I mean, we all know in what times we are living right now with all the wars and all the things that are going on. So I mean, what could be more timely to have such an article? And I think it was a great finish to my section that really shows like, okay, why does it still matter today, and how can we thinking with Froebel help us to think about the world we are living in right now, even if it's a different world than he had, and we have different thinking. But so I really love that this is the final article of my section. Yeah, to sum up, so I think oh, I'm running over my time, Chris. Sorry. Okay. So to sum up, yeah, I think there are a lot of articles that really give a good start if you want to learn more about the theory behind him and the philosophy. So, and I hope all of you will enjoy them. And I'm sorry that I took too long. And so I give over to you, Kyo.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope you enjoyed the book launch event. My section is titled Disconnection and Transitology, the transfer, translate, and transformation of Froebel through Froebelian the Froebelian study and practice. And then my background was sociology and then comparative education. And then we usually use transitology theory to as a framework to study any comparison or the sociology of education. And when Tina asked me to join the editorial group and team, I was so excited to introduce my area of the study, which is transitology. And I always looking at kindergarten movement, Froebel theory, Froebelian practice, pedagogy, using transitology as a framework. So before going to introduce my section, I want to explain about what is transitology means. So three important key words is transfer, translation, and transformation. What does it mean? Many actually scholars, such as Edward Said, who talking about this traveling transitology as a traveling theory. He's talking about if the theories or any ideas thought travel around the world, it's a transformation or translation is occurred, and also transformation has been observed. Another famous scholar is in America. It's called Popkewit. He used the term traveling library. And then he is also talking about transitology, how the theory, especially he focused on John Dewey. So when John Dewey's theory transfer from A place to B place, what's happened there? So many people actually are looking at the transformation using transitology. And then my section is many scholars talking about their own translation and then transformation. So just the easy way to explain transitology. For example, we are just about welcoming a special event. It's Christmas. So Christmas celebrated many countries, but it's different. For example, in the United Kingdom, they are ready to cook turkey, sprout, or gravies, many warm cooked vegetables, and then Christmas puddings. But if you move to Australia, they enjoy barbecue for Christmas. But Christmas for everybody, but it's celebrate differently. Translogy is just like that. It's some idea move from A place to B place. So what's happened? Different translation of, for example, Christmas, and this different celebration, it's transformation. So the same things happen to Froebel ideas. Froebel idea was created by Froebel. That was kindergarten system, practice, pedagogy in Germany. That idea traveling around all over the world. I know where you are, and you are celebrating Froebel as well. But it could be different translation was made. And also the practice, theories, and pedagogy, you can see some transformation in your own country. There is no right, wrong translation and transformation because it's related our own culture, social, political climate, and then different time, different location, even in the UK, for example, or even in America, different location or different community, they have different translation of Froebel and then different transformation of Froebelian practice and the Froebel theory. It doesn't matter how different translation and transformation are made. Importantly, we all looking for the child-centered and the education for young children. So how the theory move from Germany to UK, or Germany to Italy, or Germany to China, or Germany to New Zealand? So different location, and they enjoy and then celebrate and the Froebel series, kindergarten system, and then they created their own pedagogy. That's a transformation. So my section, there's a different story from different countries. Helen from New Zealand, Helen May from New Zealand, she was talking about translation and transformation in a local community kindergarten in New Zealand. How they transfer is the idea was disconnecting from Germany, and then it could be the different translation was made in New Zealand. But I said the discussion about right or wrong stop our imagination. So everybody can translate and then transform Froebel's ideas according to their cultural, social, educational, political reason. So what happened? I'm not going to tell what happened because I really want you to read Helen May's chapter, What's Happened in New Zealand. And then next section is by Keiko Omori. And then she is looking at Froebel movement in Italy. But interestingly, this movement was made by Jewish people. So group of Jewish people really looking at Froebel different way. According to the educational and then political climate, they had different ideas, and then different transformation was made in Italy. And that was really interesting to see, because the first kindergarten movement created by Jewish people, not Italian people. And then they are looking at and then looking for a place to live in Italy. So how the kindergarten was used by Jewish people and then to create it, not Jewish kindergarten, but it's kindergarten in Italy. So it's very interesting to see and then focus and then to see the different transformation. And this time it's not like New Zealand, it's not local or micro. It's more level at country levels, and then also some areas, and then how Jewish people are interested kindergarten in Italy. And then next one is Jane Reed, that was famous lady called Eleanor Hewitt, and then how she created a Froebelian practice in Britain. So how she, that individual Froebelian translate, and then transformed Froebel ideas, and then created Froebelian pedagogy in Britain. And then this interest work connect to next Larry Flochner's work, Grace Farmer. She is some connection from Britain, UK. Why? And then that's also I wanted to read. And then this is a very interesting individual Froebelian, especially it's linked to New Education Movement America, and then how she has been translate and transformed according to their needs and in the time in America faced. And then move to Ann's American Froebelian. That was summary of American Froebelian, how they created kindergarten movement. Some Froebelian used Froebel kindergarten system as a social ladder to climb up. Because of some gender issue in America, also this is a quite popular view in a Western country. So middle class educated women, they were looking for a place in a society. So the Anne's work is whole Froebelian translation and then transformation in America in an interesting way. Then that is linked to Luke's Australian Froebelian movement. And Australia, before I studied about kindergarten in Australia, I thought the movement start from America, from Britain. But actually, Australian Froebel movement came from America. So some values of kindergarten, they borrowed from US and then putting into Australian culture. So this is also very interesting how connected from Anne's work to Luke's work. And next one is Yale's, it's Israel. At the moment, we are looking and then watching very sad situation, especially young children in Israel. But this story start, we can see from her work, how kindergarten was created in Israel, especially by Jewish people. And that is very interesting to see and then compare, and then translation and transformation is the current situation and in the past. And the last one, it's not national, it's a national level, but in Spain, there was this chapter was focused on kindergartens, just garden. So it's how in Spain, the Froebel's, the famous work, especially the garden, is kind of core practice and then pedagogy, and then how in Spain, how the Froebelian garden was created. So here again, translation and transformation was seen. So all 8 chapters, something talking about transfer, translate, and transformation. And then I hope you really enjoy and then to read 8 chapter in my section, and then to enjoy and then to compare your country and then how it's different, how it's similar, or some similarity and differences, and then it could be used for your future study as well. So now I am passed to Jane.
Thank you, Yukio. Can you just move on the PowerPoint for me? Thanks. And on to the next one. Thank you very much. Okay, so practice is the focus for section 3 of the handbook. And for me, this is where it's all at. This is not a handbook in the sense of an instruction manual, like you get to operate a new gadget. Froebel was rightly wary of those. The aim of this handbook is to cause thought, to open up reflection and think critically. By learning about what others think, we can express our own thoughts more clearly. By sharing and discussing practice, we can articulate our own practice more coherently. To be Froebelian does not mean replicating Froebel's practice today. Kevin Brioni spoke about Froebel's context for learning, the garden and nature, gifts and occupations, and mother or family songs. These contexts permeate the chapters in this section. In my editor's introduction, I used the Froebel Trust principles to guide my thinking and to make links across the chapters in the section. However, the 4 sections of the book do not stand on their own. There are threads and interconnections throughout the entire volume. The index is a huge help for that. Today, I'm going to use Kevin's context to provide a frame for considering how practice has developed in the 21st century. Each of the chapters has layers of meaning, giving the reader the chance to explore many themes at the same time, and I'll begin with gardens and nature. Developing a community garden features in Sally Cave's chapter, with helpful advice from the Royal Horticultural Society. The garden and the outside space become the focus of each of the educators, observing the changes in the seasons and how these affordances change the opportunities for play and learning. Across the Froebel Partnership, there are conversations with colleagues in New Zealand about connection with the land and guardianship, deepening the meaning of what engaging with nature is. That same visceral connection with the soil is evident in the chapter by Kate Razzle about the further development of community allotments. In both chapters, recognising and valuing the different knowledge held by different communities is paramount. Country, in the chapter by Libby Lee Hammond, Elizabeth Jackson Barrett and Stella Louis, is more than a context. Human connection to the land or country is a sacred and spiritual belief among Australian Aboriginal peoples. Rose provides a useful explanation. Country is a place that gives and receives life, not just imagined or represented. It's lived in and with. People talk about country in the same way they would talk about a person. They speak to country, sing to country, visit country, worry about country, feel for country, and long for country. Country is not a generalized or undifferentiated type of place. Country is a living entity with a yesterday, today, and tomorrow, with a consciousness and a will towards life. Training introduced Froebelian principles, practice, and pedagogy in a way that infused Aboriginal cultural perspectives. We have much to learn from Indigenous knowledge about sustainability and ecologically sound ways of living. Helen Tovey urges us, when working with young children, to work within their locus of control. Natasha Stewart's chapter describes involving children in small changes in daily practice around single-use plastics and materials that contain plastic, reducing the amount of plastic that ends up in the ocean. The use of Froebel's gifts and occupations, or lack of use, has been one of the defining features of the different epochs of Froebelian pedagogy. Tina Bruce in 2021 advocates reconnection of Froebel's principles with practice. Block play is the direct descendant of Froebel's building gifts. Specific Froebelian block play is described by Katrina Gill. The child's real experience informs the building process, where we witness the unfolding of the child's inner ideas in outer form as he makes sense of the different houses people live in. Cultural context is reflected in this case study and in that of Margaret Brooks and Chimi Dema, where the children in Bhutan work collaboratively on their building of the dzong or temple. In both cases, the representations reveal Froebel's forms of life, beauty, and knowledge. Froebel's occupation informed the lens for different types of handwork, for example, learning from the elders in the Aboriginal communities. In Scotland, for parents and carers keen to learn more about playing with their children, trying out the occupation of weaving allowed the adults to support children with struggle, tuning into their motivations and challenges. Learning about others' occupations and trying these out was an integral part of the chapter by Alistair Lee with Mark Hunter. Visiting the British Museum to research life in Iron Age Britain initiated a whole project on museums, artefacts, and the associated different roles and jobs. Recreating a weaving loom from an Iron Age design revealed the skill and design technology people in the Iron Age had. A Froebelian approach is not just for very young children. Froebel's mother or family songs was Kevin's third context for learning, supporting parents to enjoy and understand more about playing with their children is the focus of the chapter by Elaine Fullerton. Froebel offered advice in the commentaries to his songs. In this current approach, songs, rhymes, and physical games encourage connection through playing together. When COVID restrictions were enforced in 2020, the despair felt by many educators who were prohibited from singing in their settings prompted the development of family songs at home, written about by Donna Green. Modern technology goes some way to connect us when the usual methods fail. Inevitably, every framework has its limitations, and the three contexts for learning do not truly reflect the importance Froebel placed on people and relationships, and in particular, the central importance of children and childhood. What we do with and for children makes a difference. The chapter by Lynn McNear emphasises the importance of recognising each child as a unique individual and as belonging in our settings community. When we reach out beyond our immediate establishment's community, there are powerful learning opportunities for children and adults. Fusa Abe and Ran Shirai describe the Glory Kindergarten's approach to peace education in Japan. Collaborating across different establishments is hugely beneficial for educators too. The Power of Partnership project by John Dagger and Kerry Knight describes the development of a community of practice where the focus is on learning together. According to Hargreaves and Daw, collaborative cultures comprise evolutionary relationships of openness, trust, and support among teachers where they define and develop their own purposes as a community. The support of the Froebel Trust has been invaluable. The Trust has given small grants for practice development and action research, as well as the more traditional research by academic institutions. The aim of current practice remains consistent with Froebel's. Finally, the great aim and end of the whole enterprise is the education of a person from the earliest years through his own doing, feeling, and thinking, and in conformity with his own nature and relationships, so that his life is an integrated whole. Thank you very much.
Sasha, you're muted. We couldn't hear anything at all. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Yukio, could you please move the slide on for me to the next? Thank you so much. My name is Sasha Powell, and with Tina Bruce, I had the pleasure of editing section 4 of the handbook, Interconnecting. I'd like to give you just a moment or two to have a look at the chapter titles and the author names, because this is a very expansive section with 20 chapters, and I'm afraid in 10 minutes I'm not going to be able to mention all of them. What I'd like to do is to talk about the section of the handbook as a whole, and to give you 3 completely randomly chosen examples from these wonderful contributions to the book. Yukio, please could you move it on to the next slide for me? Thank you. So when Tina and I received the chapters for section 4, the first thing that I noticed was that there is an impressive amount of Froebelian research that's happening around the world. It's impressive in terms of its originality, its quality, and the variety of disciplines, worldviews, methodologies, and topics that are represented in the 20 chapters. The next thing that struck me is that there is so much of Froebel's thinking that resonates with much more recent and contemporary theoretical perspectives in education, as well as other scientific and arts subjects. His ideas are repeatedly shored up by layer upon layer of research evidence about the importance of play, for example, or the value of nurturing children's capacities for autonomous thought, feeling, imagination, problem solving, creative action, and so on. It seems to me that the evidence is now simply too extensive for anybody to make a reliable argument that Froebelian scholars or educators might be falling prey to confirmation bias. Yes, the chapters reveal findings that are consistent with Froebel's principles, but they don't do that without the research being subject to a variety of examples of robust analytical approaches, thorough reviews of literature, and the habitual rigors of academic writing. The chapters in this section don't reify Froebel. The man and his work are shown throughout the handbook to be simultaneously brilliant and fallible. The author's research is consistently critically aware, and their accounts are consciously reflexive. So what can we learn from section 4? Well, Froebel's philosophy lends itself well to interconnections, not for any eclecticism, but for the richness of his thought. The chapter authors explore alignments and comparisons with many other subsequent and significant theorists' claims and new directions in educational and scientific research. Given that Froebel would advocate time and space for humans to develop their own understandings, his series of surmises, it also feels appropriate that many of the authors offer as questions, open doors to further research, position participants, especially children, as knowledgeable contributors. They seek interactivity of humans in non-human worlds, or they embrace uncertainty. Writing about the outdoor experience of infants and toddlers in nursery provision in England, Dr. Jojo Zafidou and Nicola Kemp connect educational environments and practices, and they ask, is being outdoors enough? They say, looking across the three phases of our research, it's clear that whilst the youngest children are offered regular outdoor experiences, there are limited opportunities for engagement with nature. Concerns about safety, emphasis on physical activity mean that the natural features may be replaced with manufactured alternatives such as artificial grass or commercially produced resources. Paradoxically then, they say, outdoor practice may be leading young children away from nature rather than developing their sense of connection with the natural world. The critical question they ask is whether this matters. In the context of growing concerns in many societies about children's and young people's mental health, especially post-COVID, Professor Alessandra Arce-Hay, working in Brazil, notes that a key feature in all brain function is the emotional systems that underlie motivation in life in general. This prompts her to ask, so how can teachers build connectiveness and meaning in their classrooms? She says, when we turn our gaze to work with the socio-emotional issue in schools, with children and teachers and in teacher training, involving the cultivation of self-compassion, compassion, kindness and gratitude, we open space for schools to be constituted at first as islands of security and loving care. Alessandra connects this reciprocal responsibility for human well-being to Froebel's spherical law. The social worlds we create with and for one another, and especially for young children, are the focus of a chapter on urban children's play opportunities by a team in Ireland involving Marlene McCormack, Aisling Silke, Annette Kearns, Leah O'Toole, Patsy Stafford, Trina Stokes, and Matthias Urban. Inspired by Froebel and underpinned by a commitment to participatory research, they have suggested that positioning play as a means of supporting a sense of connection and belonging is more important than ever in an ever increasingly urbanized environment. But rather than assume what constitutes desirable play or inhibits community play, they say they opened their hearts and minds to the not yet known through research that took them into uncertain, unknown territory, with methods that embrace messiness and utopian thinking. Through their futures workshops, they witnessed parents who were better able to imagine more possibilities for their own children's play because they'd had the opportunity to observe their children engaging in play activities and trying out utopian thinking. It isn't only Froebel's writing that motivates researchers to welcome uncertainty and be experimental with first-hand experience. In his chapter about Froebel's influence on the creative work of artists and designers, Pete Morehouse, whose own beautiful sculpture you can see on the screen because it is the cover of the handbook, describes how Froebel's gifts, famously used by architect Frank Lloyd Wright, also inspired the ballet choreographer and director Lincoln Jones. The gifts helped him to develop his visual language, working both figuratively and abstractly. Inspired by the unity of blocks inviting variation, Pete says, he used them to represent the positions of the dancers, using abstraction to growing levels of complexity. The gifts provide a means through which creativity and imagination can flourish, and for students of architecture, Pete notes, simultaneously to explore homogeneous and topological space, learning the ordering systems of constriction. In section 4, readers will find interconnections with human rights narratives and the quest for dignity of human existences, reminding me of the work of Martha Nussbaum or Amartya Sen. What do we need to live a good enough life? In the chapters, there are themes relating to social justice and the fight against oppression in society, communities, and even education, reminiscent of the work of Paulo Freire or bell hooks. The desire to foster meaningful and empathetic understandings in relationships between educators and children bring to mind the work of Joan Tronto or Nell Noddings. The ecosystemic approach to exploring research questions chimes with Yuri Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model. Sociocultural and historical lenses coincide with the work of Lev Vygotsky, Jerome Bruner, or Barbara Rogoff, and the cultural theories of Henri Giroux, and so much more. You will make your own interconnections. The research that's collected in section 4 demonstrates Froebel's enduring appeal, his prescience and foresight that early childhood education and human experience in the first years of life form an intellectual and experiential amalgam of the multitude of known and unknown parts that connect the whole of human and more than human being and becoming. Section 4 represents evidence of the unity of interest in Froebel's legacy and the plurality of its expression in contemporary research and scholarly work. It builds on the past and offers us insights for the future. Thank you. I shall hand back to Grace.
Okay. Well, we have come to the end of our time. I feel like 1 hour wasn't enough time. Well, let me thank you, panelists, for sharing with us this exciting adventure and this new book. And also thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all enjoyed it and find it informative and inspiring. We would also like to thank Mercy University, who sponsored the Zoom platform for the webinar. We appreciate your support and collaboration. Before we close this event, we would also like to remind you that the Bloomsbury Handbook to Friedrich Froebel is available for purchase from the publisher's website. I think there's a 30% special discount offered at the publisher's website until December 10th. So 2 more days left, so don't miss out on that. You can also access a free sample chapter and a table of contents from the publisher's website. Once again, thank you all for joining us today and for your interest in Froebel and early childhood education. We hope to see you again in our next event. Have a wonderful day, evening, and night, depending on where you are. Okay, panelists, can we all say
Thank you.
bye-bye? Thank you, bye-bye.